All right, g'day. So a lot of people have asked for a rundown on how I use my axe effects. I'm going to show you. I think I have the ultimate layout for the gigging musician. Now I'm going to explain the actual layout and then I can delve into the settings and how I think about this thing. Before I go ahead, I need to thank Dane Kinzer and Tyler Tomlinson, Jake Farber. These are people who have helped me immensely with getting the axe effects and any form of modeling to sound good for me, as it was something I struggled with for a long time. Now, you need to imagine that this is a physical axe effects with all 9 switches. The way I have this laid out is that I have my scenes 1, 3 here, 2 and 4 here. If I click this, which is highlighted, I get my clean tone. If I hold it, I get a more martial or rock tone. If I click this, it goes to scene 2, which is my voxy kind of sound. And then if I hold it, it goes to my lead tone, which is more just a heavy sound. I have an overdrive here and an overdrive here. This on channel 1 is a light speed, on channel 2 is a nobles. This on channel 1 is a low gain fuzz face, and on channel 2 is a Andy Timmons kind of drive. If I click this, I get a tremolo. If I hold it, I get a chorus. If I click this, I get a GE7 that's at the end of the chain just before my delays. If I hold it, I get a pitch block. The pitch block is used to go up and down a half step. When it's off, bypassed, I'm in standard. When I hold it, it goes down a half step. This is due to the fact that often I'll rock up to gigs and they'll go, hey, we're in standard. And then I get to the next gig within the same day and they go, we're half step, which is what's happening today. This is very handy. I have my tap tempo here. If I hold it, I get a tuner. I have a delay. I have 2 delays on here. I have a Memory Man and a 2290, more standardized delays. And here I have wandering delays and then a dual delay. So let's go from the beginning. On my in block, I use a noise gate. This is to mitigate problems that occur when you play at venues that have differing levels of cleanliness and electricity. So, as you can hear here, there's some noise. Even with the humbucker on. So I always put this to just around 50, and that seems to work for most venues. There are a couple of venues where I need to put it a little higher. That's fine, that can last for a set. And my pitch block, I used a virtual capo set at 100%, wide open. Now it will sound weird because you can hear the guitar in the camera, so for just a second I'm going to turn around so you're not influenced by this. Does remove a bit of tone, that's okay, but I have had to think about that a lot in the past. Maybe I could put a low cut, and that seems to work a little better. Great. My compressor is the JFET Studio compressor. Relatively simple settings. I have it at 50% in the mix, and I have the level at 2 dB. This is so it is kind of like an always on pedal. So here it is off, and here it is on. It's very, very subtle. Now I might chuck this up to say 70% and see if that makes a more audible difference. As you can tell, it's a little more compressed. So yeah, I usually run this at 50 or 60. This is a patch that I consistently save. I use this 27 as my kind of look around, have fun patch. I'm constantly changing it. Now, my drives. So as I said, this is a light speed. So let's hear that. This is a clean humbucker with the light speed. Oops, drop my kick. So it's just a low gain kind of thing. Does what it's meant to do. Sounds fantastic and does exactly what it's told. Then I have a Noble setup, more low gain version of the Nobles, so without. Let's go a single coil in the bridge. Kind of gets into that low gain Marshall territory. Yeah, does the basic thing. Here as I said, I have a low gain fuzz face. Now, I modeled this to be like my Benson Germanium fuzz, which is arguably my favorite fuzz, but favorite overdrive of all time, potentially. So let's see how that sounds. Again, clean humbucker in the bridge with this. You'll notice it's not adding a ton. That is because it stacks well, but it works well with clean and dirty amps. So again. Usual. Sounds great. Channel B, I have the Angry Chuck. I really don't do much except put the treble up and the gain down a smidge. I use this for somewhat Steve Lukather tones. Sounds fantastic, does exactly what it needs to do. Next, and I'll reset those to channel A if they're not already, so I can show you combinations in a bit. Next, I have my tremolo. I like the VCA tremolo. It sounds good. It's set to my tap tempo. That kind of thing, or set it real slow. Can do a really beautiful slow swell thing. Next, I have my chorus. I like using the stereo tri-chorus. I find it not too syrupy, but I think it sounds really good, especially if you want to do kind of the 80s. But it also works well if you're on the neck pick. You understand what I'm going for there. Now, I'm going to jump into my other effects before I come back and explain my amps, because the amps I don't treat as effects, they're scenes, so this part comes later. So, G7, this will work best if displayed with some high gain. So, I put on the Angry Chuck. Here is the G7. It's just adding a very focused and narrow mid sound, but it adds just a little bit more. So I can make it more evident here. I mainly use it for the neck pickup and middle pickups. I actually don't overemploy it too much. Now I have a reverb that's always on. It's a London plate. It's because I like how that sounds. It does exactly what I want it to do, like all of these things, and I'll probably say that again, but it's just a little delay that adds a little feel and air to the room in the digital room of the Axe-Fx. Now, I'm going to talk about delay 1. So I'm going to set this to channel 1, which is a memory man. It's set to no tempo. 440 is where I like it. I run all of my delays as mute effects in, and I run them in parallel so I can run a wet, dry, wet setup almost. So check this out, the Stereo Mind Guy, which is just a memory man. Sounds beautiful, feels great under the fingers. Especially love using it for rhythmic parts where I need to create space, but I don't need to be rhythmically active. Now, in a mix, this will get a little lost, so it won't just be like this, but... trick. Here I have a 2290. I like 2290s. I grew up loving the sound of, that's funny. You can hear the little, thank you for. I love the sound of John Petrucci's delays. I also love the sound of Robin Ford's delays. They both use 2290s at various points. Now I'll set it 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I love how it does things like that, but I love also going. Sounds great. Does the thing, does exactly what it's meant to. Again, now on delay 2, I keep my somewhat weirder delays. Again, this is mute effects in. The through is through my reverb. Now watch this, the wandering delays. This is meant to be, I guess, a kind of the edge from U2 thing, but it does a lot. So. You can do really cool, even interesting rhythmic things. That's a bit higher in the mix than I usually like, so I just lower it by 2 dB and that should work great. Next I have my dual delay. That's kind of the David Gilmour thing, right? So I'm going to quickly chuck on 2 drives and I'm just going to go for it. What I really love is setting this to a whole note on a gig. So say a tune is 1, 2, 3, 4. No, actually like 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Oh, it's too slow. I'll set it to a half note. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 38 is the half note. Okay. Now, if I put this on the chuck. Some really cool sounds. Now let's get that 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Just about there. 104 is good. Now I purposely have my delay 2s a little louder. I'm usually using them when I'm going for more with my delay. Now, I'm going to show you my scenes. So if I click my scenes, nothing should turn on. It should just change the name. Now you'll notice the amps here change. My A amp, amp 1 and amp 2 in my scene 1 are the super vibrato and a band commander. In combination, they sound like this. With a humbucker. In series. Sorry, in parallel. Middle. Neck. Yeah, feels really, really good. Now, the cabs. I'm using a 112 vibrato Lux and a 112 car ambler. I'm also using a 112 Tweed and a 212 65 bass guy. On my cleans, I tend to run a dynamic one and the ribbon. You notice there's no cutting. No cutting. Dynamic one and the ribbon. I like this combination. It sounds really good with these amps. Now, if I go to scene 2, I have an AC20 12AX7. What I've done, just to make this a little more to my liking, is I've changed the tubes to 6L6 GCJJs. Then, I've got my 59 bass guy bright, and I haven't done this yet, but it's already 6L6, but I might change this to 6V6 and just see how that feels. Now, I don't know if I necessarily love that. I don't know if I hate it, but... Oh, on KT88, that's where it's meant to be. That's what I like. So this is my more Vox style preset, hence it being called chime. Does the thing that I want. It's a bit more gain than I'd usually use, but does the rock thing kind of well. Now, what I'm noticing is the top needs to be opened up a little more. So what I might do is lower that high cut to 2.36. I might lower the gain just a tad, say 7.1. And then on this, I'm going to take my presence up to 6.2. I'm going to bass down at 4.3 and 6.7 on the mids. I'm going to open up the treble a bit and put it to 580. Oh, that's 570, not 580. I've gone against my word. Now what that's done is minuscule, but in my hands it feels a little more open. I'm going to save that. I'm going to go to scene 3 here. This is my more Marshall scene. So what I have is a Plexi 100-watt jumped, and I have a Cameron CCV 2A, which is I guess kind of the granddaddy of all Marshall style amps in many ways. I've been lucky enough to play my friend Tiago's Cameron CCV, and it is truly, truly, truly mind-blowing. Now, the cabs I run here are the exact same cabs I run for scene 4. So the cabs I run are a 412 recto slant, a 412 EV12L, they both have dynamics, and then the next thing I run is a 412 recto slant. Again, notice mic placement, very, very similar. No cutting going on anywhere. And then I run a dynamic one with the greenbacks. So here's how my Marshall preset sounds on my bridge humbucker. Does all that. Rubbish playing. But what I like about this is that I've maintained... I've got the heaviness of the Cameron, which is a, great named amp, by the way. If anyone ever wants to give me a Cameron CCV, won't be upset. You can hear it there. It's heavy as all hell. And then I got the Plexi. Now, noticeably, the Plexi is a bunch louder. So let's put the Plexi to 25, and then let's put the Cameron to, say, 12. The Cameron amps are quite quiet in the Axe-Fx, I think. Maintains a pretty good volume across. What I like about this preset, what I like about this particular scene is, although it's a Marshall, I still maintain the attack and clarity that I like from an amp, and it feels quite real to me. So instead of just oversaturation to the point of like everything being there, I feel that I've maintained good string clarity. Now, this should be on preset B, which is a smaller London plate. Now, scene 4, my heaviest scene. I run a Mark 2C++, which is actually just a goosed up Axe-Fx model. It's not really a real true 2C double plus. And then I run a solo 100 bleed, which, as you may have guessed, is a Soldano. I think Soldanos look cool. I always thought the snakeskin Soldano was one of the coolest looking amps I've ever seen. First tube amp I ever played was actually a fully loaded 2C+. It was my teacher Tom Shepard's. It was white with the imbuer with the wicker, and it was really cool. He had a 112, and I always dreamt of that amp. He sold it a few years ago. I had a chance to buy one as a kid. It didn't pan out, unfortunately. It wasn't meant to be, but someday I'll own a 2C+. I find them to be a great Dumble style amp, ironically. Anyway, here is my heaviest preset. It is absurd on purpose. If anyone wants to give me some sick old 90s RG shredder thing, I'll make some cool shred project. I'm not very much of a shredder, but what I always seek in these amps is I find often that if you run the gain too much, see mine's just below 7, just below 6.5, and then 5.5. I think if you run too much gain, you end up running into the problem of every note, and I'll show you. I'll just crank. This is at 5.48, so I'll just put it to 9.48 for now, right? You can hear it in the background. Every note starts melding together and blurring really bad. What I like about this is I go... Every note's clear. Play your Tim Miller lines all day. Whatever. Not playing anything like him. He is a genius and he's a beautiful player. Lovely man. Very lucky to have studied with him. I should talk about that at some point. Now, what I often like to do is I like to add, say, the nobles, and then something like the 2290 on top of this, just to get that absurd over the top. And that's when you see me live doing this stuff. Kind of Jeff Loomis inspired lines. You'll notice that the threshold is a little lower. It actually should be about 56, and that is so I can do more of I use a lot of delay when I play like that because I'm not very good at playing like that. There are a lot of players in town who are better than me at that, and I wish I was one of them, but I don't practice fretting all too much. I just kind of... I don't know. More of a legato guy. Anyway, so let's talk about how I think about this and how I combine this. You kind of understand. My big thing is note clarity and note separation. I think that's the coolest thing about the guitar, is when you can find a guitar that does that. So, often I'll run scene 1. In fact, so you can see the guitar a bit better. Probably should have done this at the start. I'll just raise my chair a little bit. So, often run position 2. So, you know. Do that, things like that. I'll add maybe a little drive if it's just a little. Just things like that. Maybe I'll add the Guardian Photon Speed and the G7 and go to town on a... playing. $1 plan, that's what they call that at the store, and everyone else is worth thousands. Now, a quick thing I'll notice, my CPU never runs above 82%, really. Maybe at certain points, but it's usually below 80. That's where I like to keep it. Some people like to keep it below 70. I don't mind running it high. I guess at some point I should probably get an X3. Now, how I'm always thinking is how I think about guitar. I like clear, open sounds. Sometimes I like different sounds, but the way I think about gain is instead of different levels of gain, I think of different types of gain. So I like to combine the fuzz face often with the nobles. It's a very ratty and thinner sound. Now I don't mean rat in terms of the pedal, I just mean ratty as in it's kind of rattly. Often I'll combine the Angry Chuck with the light speed for this thing. these sounds are applicable in different places. Notice? Very different on their own, but when combined, they create something not quite as good as either. Now, another thing is my tremolo and my chorus. Why have both? Well, because I can. Normal delays and weird delays. Why have both? Because I can. Sometimes when I'm taking a huge solo, it feels really cool to put on these effects and just... Now that delay is intense, but it sounds wicked, and I like how it sounds, I like how it feels. I like doing these things because what I'm achieving with this is that I'm able to basically achieve any sound I want at a few buttons clicked. Now, if they go, well, the next song's in A flat, and I go, oh, I'm in standard, I don't want to play in A flat. So what I can do is I could quickly go pitch down. Oh, I have to quickly get from my clean to my rock delay. Very easy. Now I am clicking it here. I have it set up on the preset, like I showed here. Sorry, on the axe, like I showed there. And it works, and it does the thing. Now, another thing. Getting your presets and scenes within everything is very hard. I've worked very hard to do that. Dane Kinzer showed me a really fantastic way to make that happen, and I really appreciate him for that. Overall, this is a quick rundown on how I use my axe effects, how I think about it a little bit. I can dive further, but really I just try and think about what feels good and sounds good in the context of what I'm doing. That's all that ever matters, is if it feels good and if it sounds good. Nothing else should really bother you beyond that point, because that's all there is. Does it fit what you're doing? Yeah, cool. All right, great, done, perfect. So anyway, this is just a little too long of a video explaining how I set up my axe effects, how I use it, and why I think this is the greatest setup that you could use for the gigging musician who has to do a lot within a little, you know, with little amounts of work. I don't believe in running 8 scenes, because what if I want clean with a little bit of drive and a different delay? What if I want overdrive that's totally bare bones except for that tiny bit of reverb I have on? And, you know, I like having individual control. I like having being able to pick and pluck and choose at what's going on at any given point, and being able to work within those confines of having just scenes really never worked for me. This is my axe effects preset. I hope you all enjoy, and I'll chuck this video up and can go to town on it. All right, cheers.